We will begin the 7th lecture on Hebrew. At this time, we will study the imperatives of Hebrew verbs. We will study the participles and infinitives of Hebrew verbs. Last time, we studied the functions of the perfect and imperfect forms of Hebrew verbs. We will review the imperfect form of Hebrew. The imperfect form of the kal verb is made up of the prefixes and suffixes e, t, t, te, aleph, u, tina, tu, tina, ni. The imperfect form of Hebrew indicates that an action is incomplete whether it is an action of the present, the past, or the future. Generally, the imperfect form is translated in the present or future tenses. However, if an action, including an action of the past, is incomplete, we must remember to use the imperfect form. Please remember that the imperfect form is an action that is incomplete whether it was an action of the past, an action of the present, or an action of the future. Next, let's look at the imperatives. If imperatives are classified depending on whether or not it is a completed action or an incomplete action, it would be incomplete. Hebrew imperatives are closely related to the imperfect form. There are 3 Hebrew imperatives. The first person imperative, the second person imperative, and the third person imperative. The imperative that we are most familiar with would be the second person imperative. This is the imperative. There is also the first person imperative and the third person imperative. The second person imperative is a command that says, do this or don't do this. The first person and third person imperatives are relatively softer commands. Therefore, this indicates an obligation such as you must do this, or is translated as encouragement to do something. The first person imperative of Hebrew is called the cohortative. The third person imperative is called the jussive. These are in actuality similar to the imperfect form. Let's look at an example. Let me revise one thing. The jussive refers to the second person and third person imperatives. Therefore, the second person form is an imperative. The jussive is also a second person form. In the same way, the second person is an imperative, which is a strong command such as do this or don't do this, and the jussive indicates an obligation or an encouragement that is gentle in context. Now let's see how the imperative forms are made. Again, the imperative form of the Hebrew kal verb includes the prefixes and suffixes yi, ti, ti, yi, aleph, u, ti, na, ti, u, ti, na, and ni. The forms with the person, gender, and number would be the third person masculine singular, the third person feminine singular, the second person masculine singular, the second person feminine singular, the first person common singular, the third person masculine plural, the third person feminine plural, the second person masculine plural, the second person feminine plural, and the first person common plural. Let's first look at the second person imperative. We can get the second person imperative from the second person singular and plural forms. Without the prefixes, the forms would be a second person imperative. let's use the verb malak as an example. The verb malak is a perfect form of dikao. If we were to change this into dikao imperfect form, we would add the consonants mem, lamed, and kap of malak to the form iktor to form dikao imperfect form of malak. We will add iktor to malak. Next, let's add the quiet shewa and the O pronunciation to the second vowel. Then it would be imlok. This is the kao imperfect form of the verb malak. Please remember that kao has a simple active voice. It means he rules. Therefore, the perfect form of the verb malak would mean he ruled. The imperfect form imlok would be he will rule. We will make the second person masculine singular, the feminine singular, and masculine singular, and the second person imperative of the second person feminine plural from the imperfect form. We learned that the prefix is removed from the imperfect form of the imperative, which would be the second person masculine and feminine singular, and the second person masculine and feminine plural. Please note that only the prefix is removed and the suffix remains. Now let's make the different forms. The second person masculine singular of imlok is timlok, and we will remove the prefix t from timlok. If we remove t, it would be mulok. This would be the second person imperative of the second person masculine singular. The second person feminine singular is timuluki. We will remove the prefix from timoluki. Then it will be moluki. When there are two shewas with mulu, it will become hirek. It will then become milki. Next, the plural forms. The plural forms are timoluku and timolukna. Timoluku. If we remove just the prefix, it will be muluku. In the same way, when we change this to hirek, it will be milku. This is an imperative, and it will be an imperative of the second person masculine plural. It would mean you plural will rule, or you plural rule. It could also be rule without the you. Lastly, we can make the same form of the second person feminine plural. It would be timolukna. If we remove T, it would be maluk or malukna. You plural who are female will rule, or you plural who are female rule. We can gain the second person imperative of all verbs from the active voice. For the second person strong imperative, we must remove the prefixes from the second person masculine singular, the feminine singular, the masculine plural, and the feminine plural imperfect forms. Next, let's learn how to come up with the first person imperative. This is called the cohortative. We can get the first person imperative from the imperfect form. We will use the verb malak to explain this. This is the third person masculine singular of the cow perfect form of the verb malak. Let's make the third person masculine singular of the imperfect form from the cow perfect form. We will add e and o to form imlok. This is the third person masculine singular of the imperfect form of the cow verb. Of the first person common singular, alep would become e. we would add Aleph and Shegor, and also quiet Shewa and Holem O here. Hence, it would be Emulok. This is the first person common singular of the imperfect form of the cow verb. In the same way, we can form the cohortative first person imperative from this form. When we formed the second person imperative, we removed the prefix from the imperfect form. However, when forming the cohortative, the first person imperative, we will not remove the prefix, but add a suffix. We will add the suffix a to emulok. Hence, it would be emuloka. Emuloka. Please memorize this. The first person imperative of the cow imperfect form is formed by adding the suffix a of the first person common singular cow imperfect form. Lastly, we can form the common plural form in the same way. Nimulok. When we add the suffix a to nimulok, we will have nimuloka. In this way, we would gain the cohortative, the first person imperative, from the first person common singular of the cow imperfect form and from the first person common plural. Therefore, the singular and plural forms of the first person imperative or the cohortative of the cow verb would have the prefixes aleph, shegor, and the suffix a. It is important to note that when it is plural, it would have the prefix ni and the suffix a. Lastly, let's learn about the jussive. This is an imperative form with a gentle encouragement or obligation of the second and third persons. Again, we will use the verb malak. This is the third person masculine singular of the cow perfect form. We would translate this as he ruled. we will change this into the third person masculine singular of the cow imperfect form. The basic consonants are mem, lamed, and kap. Let's make the model that we would use to make the cow imperfect form. The vowels E and O. Hence, it would be imlok. Now we will be able to identify the second and third person forms. Imlok, timlok, timlok, timuloki. Let's look at the plural forms. Imuloku, timulokna, timuloku, timulokna. Now we can find the third person imperative, jussive, from the imperfect form. Please remember that the form of the jussive is the same as the imperfect form. Hence, we can easily make the form. It has done the work for us. It has done the work for us in coming up with the form. However, the work becomes difficult when translating this. They appear the same, and we must determine if it is in the imperfect form or if it's in the second person and third person jussive just by the context. If imulok is an imperfect form, it would mean he will rule, and it would be interpreted to be in the third person masculine singular future tense. However, if this is a gentle encouragement or duty, the jussive of the third person masculine singular form, then it would be translated to be he must rule. The same goes for the third person and second person masculine and feminine singular forms, and the third person and second person masculine and feminine plural forms. Now let's study Hebrew participles. Hebrew participles are not of one part of speech, but have the character of different parts of speech. Therefore, Hebrew participles have nominal characteristics and verbal characteristics. When it has nominal characteristics, it is used as a noun or an adjective. It can be a subject or a predicate. When it is used as a verb, it can be a main verb or a helping verb. First, let's look at the participle forms of the cow verb. The participles of the cow verb and other verbs are not finite verb forms, but are non-finite verb forms. Non-finite verbs refer to parts of speech that do not have specific persons, genders, or numbers. When we are able to recognize the person, gender, and number because it is made clear to us, we would call it a finite verb. A noun should have a gender, a number, and a state, but sometimes it does not. Sometimes a noun has a person, a gender, and a number. Now let's discuss the participle forms of the Hebrew cow verb. We will use the verb malak to explain this. The cow perfect form of malak is in the third person masculine singular form. If this were to become a participle, its ending would change. It would have o and the vowel e. Participles with the vowels o and e are called active participles. The cow active participle. There is a participle that brings the vowels a and u instead of o and e. Maluk. Take a look at the a and u sounds. This is the cow passive participle. We can now come up with the form of the cow active participle. Like this, it has the three basic consonants and the vowels o and e. The passive participle also has a form, and it consists of 3 consonants and a and u. Hence, o and e indicate the active participle, and a and u indicate the passive participle. Please memorize this. The active participle has an absolute state and a construct state like the imperative. Let's look at the absolute and construct states. The masculine singular is molek. Please read along. Molek. The masculine singular construct is the same in form. Molek. The masculine plural absolute state has im like a noun. Hence, it would be molukim. Im is added to molek. It would be molukim. Other vowels change as well, but keep your eye on im, which is added to the ending. The construct state would have e at the end, just as it did with nouns. Please remember that chere and yod at the end become e. The feminine gains a in the same way as a noun would. Hence, the feminine would be moluka. Take a look at a. This is the feminine plural absolute state. Let's first look at the feminine singular construct state. A changes to at. Hence, it becomes molukat. Ot would be added to the plural. Hence, it would be molukot. Next, the plural construct state is the same. It follows the same changes of nouns. Please remember that o of o and e of the original participles do not change. However, it produces the same e sound as that of chere, and it sometimes does not. O always remains and it does not change. However, chere changes depending on the person, gender, and number. This is changeable. Therefore, we must use the presence of o to determine whether a word is a participle or not. In the same way, we will be able to identify participles. The passive participle of the cow verb maluk. Please memorize a and u. This is the masculine singular. This is the masculine singular absolute. This is the same form as that of the masculine singular construct. The ending of the word changes as it would of nouns. Next, the masculine plural form. Im is added to maluk in the plural absolute state. Here you can see that a remains, but u has disappeared. Thus, in the passive participle, a does not change, but u can change. Therefore, when we discover the a sound in kamets, we will discover the passive form of participles. In the masculine plural construct, e is added instead of im. The ending e is added to the construct, and a, the unchanging element, remains. U also disappears. Now let's look at the feminine singular absolute. The feminine singular absolute also has an a. It is important that the ending a is added. In the feminine singular construct, a changes to at. Next, ot is added to the plural. The construct also includes ot. I explained this wrong. The element that does not change is not a, but chere here, and u remains. I explained it backwards. Let's reorganize this. The cow passive participle has the three consonants that make up the basic model, as well as the vowels a and u. The unchanging element here is u. A changes or disappears. The ending of the word changes just as a noun would. Today we studied Hebrew participles. Next time we will study the functions of Hebrew participles and infinitives. With this, we will conclude the 7th lecture on Hebrews. Thank you.